Firstly, it's good news that peace talks are beginning. Why now? In essence, Trump has recognised that NATO has failed in its attempt to use Ukraine as a battering ram to weaken Russia and bring about regime change in Moscow. What caused the war? The world imperialist hegemon, the USA, is in economic decline and deeply in debt, and this is at the root of its aggressive foreign policy. Its political leadership, both Republican and Democrat, seek to maintain the American empire and the status of the dollar as the world reserve currency. To this end, it uses threats, sanctions, and its military might to enforce its dominance. It also attempts regime change operations to remove governments not under its direct control, such as in Venezuela, Iran, Syria, Belarus, etc. Its ultimate aim is to try to combat the rise of China and the development of a multipolar world where the USA will simply be another nation and the dollar just another currency. It's worth reading the RAND report entitled Extending Russia, published in 2019 and available on the internet, where various plans are outlined on how to use US power to weaken Russia and provoke regime change in Moscow. An example of CIA-funded regime change was the Maidan coup of 2014 in Kiev. The far-right government installed was in effect chosen by the USA. Now, what about UK involvement in the war? A former UK ambassador to Moscow, Tony Brenton, described the UK as the most aggressive NATO state vis-à-vis Russia and the war in Ukraine. The UK in the spring of 2022 helped quash the Istanbul peace agreement, which had been negotiated by Putin and Zelensky, by advising Zelensky to reject it and fight on with full NATO support. Since then, it's estimated that over 1 million Ukrainian soldiers have died as a result of the war, and many more have been badly injured and disabled. So far, according to government figures, £16.6 billion have been given by the UK to the Zelensky government in military and economic support. Sanctions against Russia have denied the people of Europe access to cheap fuel from Russia, and we've also got the blowing up of the North Stream pipeline, which is strongly suggested by the USA and which also caused an ecological disaster in the North Sea. The British people have never been told that Storm Shadow missiles supplied by Britain to Ukraine, launched from Ukraine against Russia, have to be programmed by British military personnel inside Ukraine, or that last year Russia threatened retaliation against British assets anywhere in the world. In other words, that would be a huge step towards a possible global war. On the 15th of November last year, investigative website The Grey Zone revealed plans by Project Alchemy, a British military and intelligence group set up in February 2022 to prolong the Ukraine war at all costs. The unit's aim was to trigger a palace coup in Moscow. Its plans included cyber attacks, terrorism, and attempts to dismantle independent media outlets using legal harassment and online censorship, such as the Grey Zone. The group also highlighted the danger of the new BRICS trading currency, or the potential for that, and the threat to domestic UK public support for the Ukraine war due to higher prices caused by the war and the sanctions on Russia. So what has the response of the left been? Practically the whole British establishment has backed the war, unlike, say, the Iraq war, and the mainstream media is firmly pro-war. Anti-democratic moves like the banning of RT has caused minimal protests. What remains of the Labour left have been silent on the matter, or worse. See John McDonnell's chairmanship of the Ukrainian Solidarity Campaign, which calls for more weapons for Zelensky and the war. Despite this, there's no enthusiasm for the war amongst ordinary people, but little organised opposition, unlike the massed opposition there is to the imperialist Zionist attack on the Palestinian people. The Labour government has been no different from the Tories, fully supporting and funding the war. The main peace organisation, Stop the War, has been poor on the Ukrainian war. and in fact initially organised demonstrations calling for Russian troops out now. This has changed over the nearly 3 years of the war, and Stop the War is now moving towards opposition to UK involvement in the war, but still doing very little on the matter. Important sections of the trade union movement have supported the war, and there is a real need for socialists and peace activists to work within the unions to win them towards active opposition to the war and towards redirecting the billions being spent in the war towards useful expenditure on social welfare and economic development. We need to organise a mass movement to demand a just and democratic peace in Ukraine and no more UK money or weapons for the war. We need to stop the US drive towards World War III, which will not end with any peace deal in Ukraine. It's obvious that Trump will be looking around at other ways to try and isolate and defeat the rise of China, and that provokes the possibility of further wars. And obviously we've also got the situation in the Middle East, or where Trump is fully backing the genocide of the Palestinian people. So it's important for socialists to fight against the imperialist drive towards World War III. And I would also say it's important for socialists to take up the issue of the suppression of democratic rights within Ukraine itself. 12 left organisations have been banned, and many socialist or communist activists have been jailed in Ukraine under terrible conditions. There is also a resistance movement against conscription, which tries to stop the slaughter of Ukrainian youth in this terrible war. So I think it's very important that even if we get peace in Ukraine, which would good, a democratic and just peace, we realise that in fact the drive towards World War III is still inherent in the system, and we have to try and build a movement to build peace between nations. Thank you.